Over the last year, I spent a lot of time and money investing in my skills as a writer. And these are going to be the three things that have actually helped my writing the most out of everything I've learned. For context, I'd say I fall somewhere between a normal writer and a copywriter, where I use a lot of traditional styles of writing, but also being into marketing and sales, I do a lot of writing with the intent to sell. So I feel like I'm in this weird in the middle ground. But the things that have helped me the most that you could literally go and implement today, first is the but therefore framework. So normally a lot of stories, especially when I'm writing and it just sounds bland, it's because you're writing an and then rather than but therefore. And I actually learned this idea from Trey Parker, one of the writers on South Park. And this is actually a lot of how South Park structures their stories, which is pretty interesting. But it's literally a 2 or 3 minute video, and it completely transformed like how I'm structuring what I'm writing. But essentially what it is instead of structuring your frameworks like I learned to write, and then I took a class, and then I got better at writing. Instead, you're structuring it as I wanted to learn to write, but I had no idea where to start. Therefore, I bought a course and got better at writing. Something along that. Not saying that's a great story, like it's a pretty boring idea for a story, but you can see right there, like switching from and then to but therefore, like already made it a little bit more interesting. Now imagine if you actually have a good idea that you're telling a story about. So, but the thinking in terms of that, it actually creates more tension throughout. And that's really what we're trying to do with writing, is like create tension to pull people forward. Which actually leads into the next point, and this is structural tension. Use this as an A to B, so you know where people are starting to where people are going, and then understanding what that transformation looks like to get from A to B. So that's internal and external. External, that's more of like the plot points. Internal, this is going to be beliefs that are changing. Internal, this is going to be how people are changing changing internally, like how their beliefs over the course of the story, like who they're becoming. For instance, that story for writing, it was a story of starting wanting to know how to write and going to a course and learning how to write. Pretty simple A to B journey. Well, what happens if you know, but internally what had happened is it was a point of confusion to clarity. I had no idea where to start. By the end, I knew I needed to take a course. I took that course, and now I actually have an idea of what's happening. So I have clarity around that. So externally, I just went, took a course, learned some things. Internally, confusion to clarity. And what's cool is like once you understand where you're taking somebody, it allows you to actually make your writing a whole lot more interesting, because instead of just telling somebody and this happened, and then actually be dropping like little hints of what's to come. So like little Easter eggs, or in traditional writing world, foreshadowing, if we want to call it that. I like Easter eggs way better, but that actually makes your writing interesting, and now you can start having fun with it because you know where you're going, but your audience doesn't. And that's the power. But if you don't take time to figure out what the A to B transformation is, you don't have that tension throughout, and that's why a lot of times like my writing would fall flat. It didn't necessarily make sense how we got to this end point. Whereas if you have at least an idea of what that transformation looks like at the end, the story makes a whole sense, and it can be alluded to earlier. And the last point, and this is going to be the hardest one to actually describe in a video, and this is going to be a sense of rhythm throughout the writing. And so I've heard a couple writers talk about this, like specifically Pierce Brown, and he'll listen, especially in terms of dialogue. I don't know if you've read Red Rising, but Darrow, one of the main characters, how he structures his rhythm is a 1-1-3. So this is a shorter sentence, and longer sentence. A shorter sentence, a sentence. And that's just how that character flows, or some of the other characters in there flow a little bit different. But having that sense of rhythm breaks up like the monotony of writing, because a lot of times, I know, especially before I started thinking about this, I'd have just like a bunch of just really sentences, and then maybe a couple random short ones. But instead, if you can intermix these things where something a little bit shorter, longer, medium, having some sort of rhythm in there makes the writing so much less monotonous to read. And then what's cool is you can quicken through some of the more. But then what's cool is depending how you want people to feel, if you want to speed the pace up, you have that ability and you know what you're doing. At the same time, you can slow it down, especially if you want somebody to like really comprehend, or you're getting to the meat of it, like the big belief breaking point that you're trying to make. You can slow it down and really build that realization out. And so really I try and use all three of these things in almost all my writing, just because it gives it some structure, gives it some flow, and creates that tension that pulls people forward. Because a lot of times, especially in the sales copywriting world, it's a lot of like, it just doesn't really resonate with me. Like, that's just not my style. I pull people along, make things interesting and fun that they want to come along, and it just creates a completely different experience for the prospect. And that's really what it's about at the end of the day. If we can make happy customers and create an experience people want to be on, then all of a sudden you're not selling somebody, but you're just creating an experience and they're coming along with you.